Today is July 30th, 2011. I'm interviewing Joseph Godenzi at his home in Winsted, Connecticut. Interviewer is Eileen Hurst from Central Connecticut State University. Joe, for the record, would you state your full name, your date of birth, and your present address?
Joseph Adrian Godenzi, 446 Platt Hill Road, Winsted, Connecticut. I was born March 11th, 1948.
Joe, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted, but then I volunteered for the draft. Me and Paul Vicari and Dave Tezera.
Can you explain what that means?
The reason we did that is we got drafted and we wanted to go into the military together instead of going our separate ways, and so we all went down and volunteered. That way they rushed us through and got us to go, so we went together rather than going as individuals.
Did all three of you get drafted at the same time?
I know Paul and I did. I'm not sure about Dave. I believe he did, you know, right in that area or so, but I know that Paul and I both got drafted at the same time.
So the three of you, had you been friends growing up?
Known each other almost all our lives.
So you decided you'd go down and enlist together?
We'd go down and, yes.
So where did you go to enlist?
I believe Hartford. I don't remember for sure, but I believe it was in Hartford.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living with my parents on Center Street in Winsted.
In Winsted, so all three of you were from Winsted?
Yes.
Originally?
Yeah.
After you enlisted, how long before you were inducted?
About 3 weeks. They didn't give us very long.
And where did you go for your induction?
I believe that was New Britain. I'm not positive, but I believe it was in New Britain.
How long did you have then before you went to basic training?
I'll guess a week. I'm not positive.
So everything happened fairly quickly.
Back then they were rushing you in. They wanted people as fast as they could get them in.
Do you recall the date, or at least the month and year?
That I started?
Yes.
February 20th, 1968.
I guess you do. So, where did you go for your basic training?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
And how long did that take?
Approximately 8 weeks.
Can you tell me what basic training was like?
In the beginning, it was extremely difficult. It was physically difficult, and you know, you had to do things that you weren't used to doing: scrubbing floors, cleaning things, always polishing your boots, always having inspections. The physical part of it was very difficult too, especially the training, marching with big packs on your back and getting up at 4 in the morning and going on long marches and stuff. It was extremely difficult. It wasn't something, I had been used to that because I had played football in high school, but I wasn't really, at that stage of my life, I wasn't prepared to get out and be physically adapted again.
Why did you choose the Army to enlist in?
I don't know. I love the ocean, but I didn't want to be out on the water. The Air Force was a 4-year commitment, and I wasn't prepared to give up 4 years of my life. Actually, the Navy was too. You weren't drafted by those, and I didn't want to go to the Marines at the time. So I guess we all decided the Army was where we were going.
Do you recall any of your instructors from basic training?
Oh my goodness. There was a Sergeant Ross. He was my drill sergeant. And there was a sergeant, I believe his name was Super, or yes, Super, S-U-P-E-R. I know Sergeant Ross ended up going to Vietnam and was killed there.
So you were in basic training. You were probably in the minority. Did you stay with your two buddies? Were Paul and Dave with you the entire time?
Yes, we were in the same outfit, same everything. Not in the same room, but we were in the same battalion, same everything.
So you would do your daily training together? You'd see each other every day?
Every day. Every
that
day.
must have been kind of nice.
That was enjoyable. That was at least we could talk, and we had people that you could relate to, which made it a lot easier.
Did you have a graduation from basic?
Yes, we did.
And did your family come down for that?
No.
Where did you go after basic training?
One other thing, during basic training, I ended up being the only person in the whole battalion to max the PT test, the physical training test. I was the only one in the whole battalion to get a perfect score.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana right after that. I got 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off, I think, something like that. And then we went to Fort Polk.
And how long were you at Fort Polk?
I believe 10 weeks.
What was that for?
Advanced infantry training.
What was that like? What kinds of things did they train you in?
They trained you basically when you came into Fort Polk, you saw a big sign that said, "Welcome to Fort Polk, Louisiana, home of the combat infantrymen bound for Vietnam." So you knew you were going to Vietnam. At that time, too, Paul and I and Dave split up. Dave and Paul went together in another outfit at Fort Polk, and I was in the infantry outfits because they were in a different. Their bit training was different. They were being trained for something different than infantry.
So what was your infantry training like?
It was extremely difficult. It was actually, in my opinion, it was harder than Vietnam. They used to, there was more snakes. They used to drop us off out in the middle of swamps until you find your way back. The physical aspect was a lot greater. You had a little more freedom because at like 4 or 5 o'clock after you get done with training, you could basically go do what you want. So I could go down to the commissary. I could go see Paul and Dave, which I did frequently. The training was basically what they were doing is training you to become a soldier. To get your skills to be a lot better than they were. Basically they just tried to get you into the Army at Fort Dix. Fort Polk was more specific. Teach you to become an expert shooter, an expert in finding your way around, jungle warfare, how to adapt when you got into the jungle, how to deal with different explosives, different weapons. It was just a more advanced training for what we were about to encounter.
Do you have any memorable experiences from Fort Polk?
Not really. Fort Polk was pretty much pretty basic. No, I don't really. Not during training. I had a few off, like weekends when you had the weekend off and stuff. We had a few good times together, but I don't remember anything being any different.
Do you think your training felt any different knowing that you were going to go to Vietnam? Did you take it more serious?
I definitely took it more serious. I became more focused and realized that my life was going to be on the line, and not only mine but everybody I was with. So I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be ready to go do what I was trained to do. Even though I was young and naive, I still felt like I was ready. I was ready to do something different.
Where did you go after Fort Polk?
I flew to Fort Lewis. I went home for like 3 weeks, and I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and from there to Vietnam.
How long did you stay at Fort Lewis?
Oh, geez.
Was it just a stopover?
Yeah, it was just like a couple of days.
Oh. And then you went directly from Fort Lewis to Vietnam?
Yes.
Where did you land in Vietnam?
Cam Ranh Bay.
What was your first impression?
My first impression probably was, the heat, the humidity, the fact that, you know, guys that were, you know, you would see guys that were on their way home that would look at you like, you poor suckers, you poor guys, you know, you're about to begin this journey and we're all done with it. That was a difficult thing, seeing guys, you know, I was happy for them, but in the same way I was like, oh boy, I don't know if I'm ready for this and stuff. It was difficult, and wondering where you're going to go. You know, where you're going to go, where you're going to be assigned when you got there. That was difficult.
So you didn't know going in what you were going to be doing. Now, did you fly over with your two friends?
Yes, I did.
So you were still together?
Still together.
When you landed?
Yep.
When did they split you up?
I believe it was the first night there. I believe I got chosen right away in the first group that got picked, and we were just, that was it.
So
get your bags.
As, like, were you a replacement for a unit?
We were brought out there. We were brought out at, I think it was like my time. I think it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. We were brought out there, and they read off our name. If your name was called, you went and got your bag, and you met at a certain spot, and you were flown to your new outfit, your new post.
And where did they fly you?
Up into the Central Mountains, Pleiku. A large city in the Central Highlands called Pleiku.
Was there an Army base there?
Yes, the 4th Infantry Division. That was their home base.
What unit were you put with?
I have no idea. I don't remember.
Were you stationed at Pleiku your entire time in Vietnam?
No, I was there like a week. I was there for, actually I was picked out of about maybe 1,000 guys. That I ended up picking me and 4 other guys to go out on a patrol, an ambush. Like the second night I was out there, and I was so terrified that every noise I heard when I was up on my time as you know, on guard duty, I kept waking up the guys, the guys that had been out in Vietnam. I kept waking them up. Something's out there, and they kept telling me it was water buffalo or something, whatever. They you know, they knew what it was. It wasn't anything serious. So, but I was terrified.
And that was only the second night you were at Pleiku?
Yeah, second or third night. It was right away. It happened right away. They sent me out on one of these things.
Were you the only new man on it?
No, there was 5 of us.
They put all 5 of you new people together?
5 of us with about 3 or 4 guys that had been in Vietnam a while. And they sent us out on a, I don't know if it was an ambush. It was like a patrol, and we just sat in an area, lining up and down a trail. And they just had us sit there for that night, and then we came back the next morning.
Now, when they trained you at Fort Polk for your advanced infantry training, what were you specifically trained? What was your job?
Search and destroy, and make contact, and find out where the enemy was, and if so be it, we had to encounter them. If they were in an area or in a spot that we didn't want them there, we encountered them. That was what we were trained for.
Now, you say you were at Pleiku for about a week?
Yes.
And then, where did you transfer?
I was flown to an outfit somewhere south of, it was somewhere near a Special Forces camp called Bamituot. I don't know how to spell that.
Oh.
BAMITUOT, something like that. It was a Special Forces camp, and we operated in that area for quite a while. I don't know exactly how long.
And that was more in the south of
a little bit south of Pleiku, pretty close to the Cambodian border. We were running, and then we started, basically what we did is just, we were in a big, large perimeter for probably a month, running missions in and out of that perimeter.
Now, it was a Special Forces camp, or?
Well, not where I was. The Special Forces camp was in the area. That was in Bamituot, but we were like either a little bit south or a little bit north of that Special Forces camp. We were in the area, general area, but we never saw any of them from that Special Forces outfit.
Did the Army have an actual base where you were stationed?
No, not that I know of. We were basically...
You were not in a base, you were out...
No, we were basically in a large perimeter, probably, I don't know, maybe 100 guys. We had a perimeter dug in, we had bunkers dug in, we had an LZ, a landing zone for helicopters, and we're basically running missions in and out of that base camp for quite a while. And then we moved.
Well, how long would you say?
I'd say about a month. No more than a month, about a month.
So it was like 100 of you guys right in that one area?
Yeah.
Now, how often would you go on missions?
Probably me as an individual, probably every 2 or 3 days. But at night, you would, if you weren't out on one of those missions, you'd be doing guard duty, either on the perimeter, or they would have 2 or 3 that were 2-man or 3-man observation units, to which were probably 100 yards outside the perimeter, in which you would sit out there. You'd go out at night and you'd sit there all night and just listen for anybody making any movements whatsoever, just in case anybody was coming up to attack the perimeter.
Now, on your missions that were your missions usually in the daytime?
Yeah, well, we would go out on those missions during the day, like you go out on patrols for the whole day, go to a certain area, certain distance, and come back. You know.
When you would do something like that, what would a typical day be like? Like, what time would you get up and...
Oh, we'd get up at daybreak. You'd get up, you would eat, do your business, go take your pills. You had to take 2 pills every day, one for malaria, one for something else. 2 pills every day. You would go take your pills, you would get yourself ready, put some food in your pack, you know, get your canteens and everything filled, and make sure your weapon was clean. Probably leave like 8, 9 in the morning and come back, you know, before it got dark. You'd come back before it got dark, because you couldn't walk into the perimeter in the dark, because we had mines and everything set up, claymore mines and everything set up everywhere. So, and they were activated during the evening.
Now, when you were at Bamituit for this period of time, and you'd go out on your missions, did you encounter any enemy during that period?
We encountered a few. We encountered a few times. We ended up getting into small firefights. We'd end up crossing with some of them. There'd be movement, and we'd have movement, and we'd end up walking into each other, and there'd be a small firefight, last an hour or 2. Nothing really that was. I mean, every firefight's dangerous, but nothing that was just overwhelming, like what happened later on, you know.
Do you recall your very first firefight?
My first one, yeah, we were, let me see, I gotta remember exactly now. We were coming down. Actually, my first firefight wasn't even out of that camp.
Where was it?
The first month I didn't have any very little contact with any the North Vietnamese. My first one was, we had moved. We had taken maybe 35, 40 of us, went into another area and dug in on a mountain, on the side of a hill. And actually what we were doing then is we were working these 5-man, they call them 5-man alert missions, where you would go out for 2 days. You would walk out, go to a certain spot, like say overlooking a river, overlooking a valley, and you would sit there for 2 days and observe, trying to see if you can see the enemy moving up and down trails or the river line or anything like that. And we were coming back, I remember one time, extremely dangerous missions, because if you got seen, 5 guys, your chances of survival weren't good. And we were coming back, and we were coming over a hill, and there was a group of about 15 North Vietnamese soldiers walking down the riverbed, a stream, and we just kind of walked into each other, and a firefight ensued. And it was kind of funny, because what I did is, I was in the rear at the time, and I got down behind a log, and I was watching from behind, watching everything behind us, and the guys kept saying, "No, they're over the bank here, over the bank." I kept saying, "You guys take care of that. I'm going to make sure nobody sneaks up from behind us." You know, like I used to, like when I used to watch cowboy and Indian things and stuff. I kept saying, nobody's going to sneak up from behind us, and that was. And when we got back up on the hill after we had this encounter, everybody kept saying, "My God, that was such a great move. That was such a great thing you did there." Well, you know, there was plenty of guys to take care of what was in front of us. I mean, but we had some guys get hurt that day. We had a gentleman that day, had been it was his first day out in the field, out in what we used to call the bush. It was his first day in the bush. Got shot 4 times. I came down over the hill, and there he was laying in the stream. But he really wasn't even that badly hurt. He got shot in each leg, got shot in an arm, and then he got grazed on his forehead. And he was fine. He's laying there, and I kept saying to him, "Oh, boy, are you lucky? You're going home. You're going home." And he kept saying, "Oh yeah, I'm lucky." And but that was my first encounter. That was just chance happening. We walked into each other, but that was the first one.
What does LRT stand for? LRT, you said it's
LRT? Long-range reconnaissance patrols. They would send us out for, like I said, for 2 days and 2 nights, and I mean, you couldn't do anything. No lights, no cigarettes, no nothing, because if they saw you, like I said, your chances of survival were almost nil.
Now back at Bammy Tuit, how long were you there?
I was in that area about a month.
And then where did they move you?
They moved us south, and I guess, let me see, south and probably west, because we moved a little more. We moved more towards Cambodia, and a little bit farther into the jungle. We were watching. Basically, what we were doing was watching. They had supply trails coming down through Cambodia, and they would cross into Vietnam. And we were kind of watching areas where they would cross into Vietnam to anticipate where they were. That's what those alert missions were all about, so that they wouldn't come in and surprise or overrun. So
were you watching the Ho Chi Minh Trail?
No.
Was it other smaller trails?
Smaller trails, smaller. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was like down through Laos. It might have been into Cambodia, probably was into Cambodia, but they were farther, it was farther inland. We were watching the small trails that broke off of the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Were you ever over the border into Cambodia?
Yes, at times.
What were your missions in Cambodia?
Same thing. That's what they were, those long-distance alert missions. We would go in and just set up and watch and wait in and out, because you weren't supposed to be in there. But we would just, you know, we would just move in, stay there for a couple of days, and come back out.
So when you moved now to the south and west, where did you set up camp, and was it another perimeter like at Bammy Tuit?
It wasn't that big. It wasn't that big. These were like small ones. Like I said, we probably had 35, 40 guys. I think it was more like 4 platoons, which I think there's like 10 men in a platoon. So it was like 40 guys maybe.
So that was your entire...
The entire perimeter. We got up on the side of a mountain. We dug in. We all made our own bunkers, you know, dug our own holes, and started working those alert missions. And what happened was we started getting encountered. These alert missions.
What period now are we? What year and month?
We're probably, let's see, July. This is now, we're into August, maybe early September of '68. And we started encountering the NVA on these alert missions, and we were losing guys. I mean, we actually went out there. actually we had one of those alert missions, and I was out on one of the, like I told you, where we'd have these perimeter watch bases, guard duty out in the perimeter, and one night I was out there with 2 other guys, and all of a sudden we heard one of these 5-man alert things said, "The little bastards are all over us, they're coming." And what happened was there was like, I don't know, maybe a battalion, not a battalion, probably, oh, I don't know, but maybe a battalion, I don't know. They kept saying there was hundreds of them coming down the trail. And so what they...
Just your 35 to 40 man outfit?
Yeah, but we were up on the hill. This was the 5 guys out on the alert mission, all by themselves, and they were hidden. And what happened was they kept saying over the radio, "They're all over us, they're all over us." And so what happened was they called our perimeter and they were talking to our the charging officer of the whole of our whatever we were, our platoons and stuff. They were talking to them, and they kept saying, "They're everywhere, they're everywhere." And so what happened is they called artillery in, and the guys that were down there kept saying, "You're killing them, you got them, you're killing them, they're running everywhere, you're killing them, you're killing them." And that happened all night long. That went on all night long. And then the next morning, we got up, and we went down, we packed up, and we went down to where they were, and we didn't find any dead NVA soldiers. They must have dragged them all off, but we found 3 of our guys were dead. One was still alive, but he was really badly wounded, and the other one was okay. But we got into, they obviously hadn't left yet. They were in the area, and we got into a very, very, very serious firefight that day. And actually, we lost all 5 of those guys that were on that thing. They all ended up getting killed. One of them was a lieutenant who was leaving the field the next day. The next day was being taken out of the field and was going to be shipped home. And that was one of the worst experiences I had in Vietnam, knowing this guy was, and that firefight lasted quite a long time, but we finally...
Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, at the time I was carrying an M60 machine gun, which was, when you were engaged with the enemy, you didn't want to have the machine gun, because that was the one piece of our machinery or weaponry that they wanted to knock out, because that could inflict the most punishment on them. With a machine gun, you were gonna hurt some people, and I happened to have the machine gun that week, and I just set it up in a trail, me and my guy that had all the ammunition, and we just kept firing away for I don't know how long that lasted. That lasted quite a long time, but we finally ended up driving them off, and then we ended up with the bodies. We carried our 5 guys. Actually, we captured 2 guys that day, 2 NVA soldiers, and but they wouldn't talk to us, so they were put on a helicopter and were shipped back to the rear. Whatever became of them, I have no idea. I have a good idea, but I'm not about to say. It probably wasn't pleasant, whatever they had to go through, unless they talked right away. But we also, we had ARVN guys, which were South Vietnamese soldiers. We always had a couple of them because they spoke, the fluent Vietnamese. So, but that was a very difficult day and a very difficult period, watching some of your own guys get killed.
What's your opinion of the ARVN that worked with you?
Not very good at all. They basically, they were very lazy. They didn't want to be into the conflicts. They very seldom engaged themselves. They always stayed back and let us do all the fighting. They didn't help a lot. But we had to have them because we needed expertise in communicating. So.
How long were you at that perimeter before you were moved?
I never did move. That's the perimeter I was in until I got hurt.
All right. So, how long were you there before you were injured?
Another couple of weeks.
So can you tell me about the incident where you were hurt?
Yep. I was, the morning of September 25th, 1968. We had just gotten mail call, and I have the letters. One is from Paul Vicari, and I was sitting there on my hooch reading my letters, and all of a sudden, when you went to go to the bathroom, you always went out with two guys. One guy who was going to the bathroom, another guy to keep guard, and they came running out of the woods screaming, "They're coming! They're coming! They're coming!" And we all just jumped into our foxholes, our bunkers, and got ready. And within a couple of minutes, they were all hell broke loose. The firefight had begun, and they were everywhere. I never saw any that day, though. It's kind of funny because you knew they were there. You could hear them, the bullets were flying everywhere, but you couldn't see them. And you just fired. My little routine was I would go down. I'd put a magazine in my clip. I'd put one in my hand and one in my mouth, and I would come up and just shoot off a magazine, dip, get rid of it, put the other one in, come up, shoot it off, come down, dip. I did that. I don't know for how long.
What were you shooting? What was
M16. At that time, I had gotten rid of the machine gun, and I also used an M79 grenade launcher for a while, but I was off of that too. I was on the M16 at the time, and then all of a sudden it felt like I had gotten punched in the back. I don't know, when you were a kid, you know how you get punched in the back and you lose your wind? Yep. Felt like somebody had punched me in the back, and I just like, oh, okay, whatever. We were calling in our artillery, but we had to call in right on top of us the first few rounds because they were overrunning us. They were so close to us, we knew they were about to come into they weren't that far off our perimeter, maybe 30, 40 feet. It wasn't like they were 100 yards away and we were fighting, or 50 yards. And the first few rounds landed inside the perimeter, and that's what happened to me. Is that's it felt like my back got punched. It was actually the shrapnel from our own artillery getting me in the back, wounding me in the back. But I didn't think anything of it. I just kept doing what I was doing, and then all of a sudden, my sergeant, who was in my bunker with me, said, "Joe, you've been hit." He says, "Look at," and I looked down. There was a big pile of blood, a big puddle of blood on the floor of the bunker. So he said, "You better sit down." So I sat back and tried to clear my head, make sure I was all right. I felt fine. I didn't feel like, oh, okay, I'm in trouble here. I felt fine, but I must have blacked out. And when I came to, my sergeant was laying across me, and the back of his head was gone. He had been hit with an RPG. So there have been times in my life where I felt like, geez, maybe me getting hit the way I did, I was fortunate that because I don't know where that RPG came from. It might have come from that direction, which I was on the right side of the bunker. So if it came from that direction, I might have been the one to get it. But anyway, he was dead. And I tried to get I'm only 19, 20 years old. I'm trying to get get your act together here. And then I'm hollering to guys, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they're screaming, they're everywhere, and we're fighting. And then all of a sudden, a grenade came in the hole. They threw a grenade in our hole, and me thinking, being such a good athlete, that I could grab it and throw it out. And I grabbed it, and I let it go. But it blew off just as it left my hand. That's what happened to my hand. It blew off. Blew off two of my fingers, and my thumb. One of my fingers and my thumb, excuse me. But pieces of the other two fingers. And if I had time to think, I could have easily just thrown his body on it, and who knows, I still might have a right hand, but you don't have much time to think. You got to make that decision quick. So It's never been a problem with me.
So the grenade went off right in your hand while you were still in the bunker? You never...
I got rid of it. I got rid of it, but it couldn't have been more than a couple inches out of my hand and it went off. I mean, if it was one of our grenades, I'm dead. It was one of theirs, which they call concussion grenades, which basically all they want to do is wound you. They, you know, they'll burst your eardrums. They'll, you know, like they did to me, they'll blow a few fingers, you know, deform you a little bit. And then I actually panicked. I threw the body away from me and I jumped out of my bunker and I crawled through my hooch and I got up beside a log, a tree that was on the ground, and I laid there and I screaming, and then all of a sudden a tree fell on me and crushed my chest and punctured one of my lungs, and I was still screaming. And the first two medics that came to me got shot. They couldn't get to me because we were so into it in such an intense firefight that it took, I don't know how long it took to get a medic to get to me, you know.
Could you see them coming to help you? Did you know that help was on the way?
I saw the first one coming, but he didn't make it. He got shot. And then I saw the second one coming. Well, I didn't see the second one, but I heard him. They said, I'm on my way. But he didn't make it either. And then what happened was I laid there for a while. Then finally the third guy got to me. And because I had such serious stomach and back wounds, they couldn't give me morphine. So basically all he did was wrap up my hand and put bandages around my chest and my back. And that was basically all he could do until...
Why can't they give you morphine?
When you have stomach, I don't know what the reason exactly is, but yeah, if you have stomach wounds, stomach things, they can't give you morphine at the time. So I don't really, but all I remember is looking at my hand and saying, oh my God, I'm never going to play ball again. That's all I remember.
And the firefight was still raging around you?
Absolutely, absolutely. It raged on for, I don't know, 5-6 hours. And I laid there, and then we had a monsoon downpour. I remember laying there in the rain just pouring down on me.
Did the medic stay with you?
No.
So you're there all by yourself?
All by myself. But I had a friend named Ronnie Stuckey. His name is on the wall. He got killed. They went back in there 5 days later. They left that perimeter that night, my outfit, and 5 days later they went back in there, and the NVA had settled into our perimeter, and they were waiting on them. And my friend Ronnie Stuckey got killed. He was from Detroit, and it was 1968. The reason I remember this so well is 1968. The Detroit Tigers got in the World Series that year, and he kept talking. He kept me from going into shock. He kept saying to me, Joe, God damn it, you're going home. You're going to go see my Tigers in the World Series, and you know, he was like, God, I wish I could have hugged him and just said thanks for, you know, taking care of me. But then...
So he stayed with you until you were medevaced out?
He wasn't actually with me, but he was
close enough
we could communicate. We were talking, and he kept saying to me, you're all right, don't worry about it, we got everything under control. And finally the firefight ended, and what they had to do is come in with a chainsaw and cut me out, because the tree was all over me. They had to cut all the branches and everything off with the chainsaw. And then what they did is cut a bunch of trees down, because we were in such heavy jungle, and what they did is hoisted me. You know, they put me on a stretcher, but they had to put ropes around it and hoist me up into the chopper.
Well, that was quite an ordeal.
It was quite a day.
What was your mental state? Can you recall?
I was, actually I was pretty calm, because I realized I'm going home. I didn't feel like I was life-threatening injuries. I didn't feel like I was going to die. And I just kept asking, you know, how is everybody? We lost 2 guys that day, 2 guys hurt, or 2 guys dead. My sergeant and another guy got killed. I don't know how many got wounded. But, you know, I remember what they did is they cut everything off me. The only thing I had on me was my belt and my back pocket with my wallet in it. That's when I got hoisted up on the helicopter. That's all I had on me was that. I still had my wallet. But when I got medevaced out, that's what I was in. And then they took me to a MASH unit.
Where?
I have no idea.
Was it still in country?
Oh yeah, it wasn't that far. Probably, I would figure probably in the Pleiku area. You know, with somebody, because Pleiku was such a big base, I would figure in that area, but then when I got there, I went obviously I went right into surgery, and I woke up like 5 days later. That was the time when I went into a coma, and that was when they sent 2 people to my parents' home to tell them that I probably wasn't going to make it, because I was in a coma and I was so seriously, internal injuries were so bad that they didn't anticipate me making it out. And I remember that my sister was the one who answered the door, and these 2 guys are standing, she just ran right over them, because my grandparents lived about a couple hundred yards up the street. She ran right over them and ran up there screaming all the way, you know, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. But she didn't know. They never got to say anything. They just, you know, eventually they told my parents he's still alive, but his chances aren't very good.
What was your parents' reaction?
Well, my mother was hysterical. My father, I don't really remember him saying anything other than, you know, my father was the type that I was like, I was a hero. I did, you know, he was proud. He was so proud of what I had done, going over there and doing what I had to do. But I would figure my mother was hysterical when she found out. I don't know. I don't even remember ever asking her, but I would figure she was hysterical.
What surgeries did they conduct on you when you were out for that 5 days?
Basically, what they did is just kind of, you know, took off the tips of these 2 fingers, stabilized my hand, stitched. My father said I had 252 stitches in me. They stitched up all, because I have scars up and down my back, my butt. My foot was literally almost blown off from that grenade. It literally almost blew my foot off. It was like when they took my boot off, my foot flopped.
This is the same grenade that blew your hand off?
Yeah.
Got your foot?
Got my foot too. But they fixed that. You know, they did a great job there. I was there like I came out of the coma about 5-6 days later. I woke up and I looked around, and there was a whole bunch of guys from my outfit that were there. When they went back in 5 days later, my friend got killed around Stuckey. They were waiting on him. They got I don't know how many guys got killed, but a lot of them got wounded, and a lot of them were right there, sitting there. And I looked at them. I said, "What's going?"
Were they there as patients?
Patients. Oh, they're all patients. Then I said, "What are you doing here?" Because I knew some of them had helped put me in the chopper, you know, get me on the medevac and get me out of there. And I said, "What happened? What are you guys doing?" We went back in. And he said they said they were waiting for us, and they got ambushed. They just had no chance. And then I stayed there another week. I stayed in that hospital another week. And then I was shipped to Okinawa.
And did you stay in a hospital in Okinawa?
I stayed in a hospital in Okinawa probably for a month. I was, they operated on me, I'm going to say half dozen times.
In Okinawa?
Yeah, that's where they restructured my hand. I mean, did what they could to my hand. They stabilized everything else, all my internal injuries. I had a punctured lung. That was from the tree. My lung was punctured. They got that back together, stabilized that, got me back on everything there. But I ended up catching malaria while I was in the hospital.
What had you an injury?
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous, because I was in a room with like 40 guys, all injured, and I was the only one that came down with malaria. And for 2 days, I'll tell you, catching malaria was worse than getting hurt. For 2 days, to me anyway, for 2 days I was laying on a cold bed, and I had a nurse 24 hours 24 hours straight, 48 hours actually. There was a nurse there putting ice packs under my neck, under my armpits, under my knees, in my crotch, and then taking towels in ice buckets and dipping the towels in and putting it on my forehead, wiping down my chest so I could never sleep. For 48 hours, that's all they did to get my temperature to come back down. Then finally my temperature came down, and I got out of that.
Now, had the Army contacted your parents and told them that you were going to survive?
Yes. Actually, in Okinawa, I finally got to call my parents and let them know that I was okay, and I was going to be. I didn't know how long. I says, I'm okay. I'm going to live. Some of the things you're going to see aren't pretty, but I'm fine. I'm going to live. I'm going to have whatever. I'm not going to die. And my mother was extremely happy. I didn't even think I talked to my dad. I know I talked to my mother. I don't remember talking to my dad.
When you recovered from the malaria, did they transfer you out of Okinawa then?
Not right away. It was like 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. They did the operations, a few operations to stabilize everything. It was probably maybe a week after the malaria cleared up, maybe 2 weeks. But then they finally shipped me out of there.
And where did you go from there?
I went to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco I was shipped east. I ended up at Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
In the hospital?
Yes.
And how long were you at Fort Devens?
A month.
Did they do more surgeries at Fort Devens?
No. At Fort Devens they did basically all they did at Fort Devens was rehab. But that's when I got to see everybody. Actually Fuzzy, Fredette, and a couple other guys came up. And when they walked in, it was like I panicked. I didn't know what to do when they walked in, and I went, well, here it is. I just stuck my hand out, and they all God, they turned white. I thought they were going to all get sick. And then that was fine. They were okay after a few minutes, and then it was great to see them. It was fun. Then my parents came the next day with my grandparents, and I was more prepared. Kept my hand underneath, and I explained that to them. I says, I'm fine. I'm not going to die. I'm going to live a good life. What you're going to see is not pretty, And at the time, I didn't have this. See, it was just my thumb was gone, so it was just this little. This here they put on the VA later on made me a thumb, a pinch. But I had this finger was gone. The tips of these two were gone, and my whole thumb was gone. And so when I showed it to them, to them it had to look pretty gory, but it wasn't bad. Believe me, it wasn't that bad. And I just explained to them. I says, listen to me. I'm going to live. I'm going to be fine. You got to be happy with that.
Now, the morning of the accident, you said they had just had mail call?
Yes.
And that you actually had a letter from one of the buddies you joined with, Paul, that you had read?
Yes.
And you still have that? Did that stay on your body the whole time?
They put they put the 2 letters inside my pocket with my wallet. Remember I told you all they left was my pocket? They stuck the 2 letters. Actually, I have them here, and they're all covered with blood.
Both letters?
Both letters. One was from a friend, a girl, not a girlfriend, but a friend, a female friend from high school. Her name was Rita Di Giovanni, and she had written me a letter. There was 4 or 5 girls from high school that were writing to us, and she had written a letter. I got one that day, and I got Paul's that day. And
now Paul and Dave were still in Vietnam. How did they hear about your injury?
I believe they heard from their parents. Their parents, because it was in the paper. Maybe I don't know how many days after it happened. It was in the paper, and they had put in the paper that doesn't look like he's going to survive. Seriously wounded, doesn't look like he's going to survive. And then, so I'm thinking that's how they found out. Their parents wrote them a letter.
When did you next see them?
When they both came home from Vietnam. Dave, I don't remember. I don't remember seeing Dave when he first came home. I remember Paul, they had a party. We were all waiting for him at his house, his parents' house. And when he got off the plane, or whatever, the family members brought him to the house, and we were all there. Basically, I did that with a few friends. You know, another friend, Doug Warner, who went on to, he was in the Marines, and when he came home, they had a big gathering, and that's pretty much the way it was after that. You know, when people were coming home, we would always get together, welcome them all home.
After your 1 month or so at Fort Devens in rehab, where did you go?
Went to Walter Reed, Washington, D.C.
Was that for more rehab? Or was that for reconstruction?
I was at Walter Reed for about 10 months, and I hate to say this, but they did nothing. No operations, little physical therapy, but basically what I did is get up every morning at 8 o'clock. They have doctor's rounds. I'd get dressed, and then we would leave. 8, 9, 10 of us would leave and go somewhere, go to a bar, go to a museum. You know, for like 8 to 10 months, that's what I did. Until
you actually leave the premises?
Left the hospital grounds, went and did something every day. Actually, nothing was done. This is the. When I got shipped to Walter Reed, I was still like, you know, still having a lot of difficulty dealing with what had happened and my hand and everything. I got put in a room with a young man who was 19 years old, had both legs gone, an arm and an eye gone. And for a month we were in the same room, and this guy kept me in stitches, laughing, joking, and to this day, I don't remember his name. I'm so upset with myself, but he made me aware that I am one lucky human being, because I knew I was going to walk out of that hospital, and he was never going to walk out of that hospital. And I think that's what helped me. I've never had a problem mentally. I've never had PTS, just a little bit, but I've never had anything serious like most of the guys have. And I owe it all to that gentleman. He just literally was the greatest thing that happened to me during my Vietnam era thing. He was just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And then they moved me out of his room, and then for the next 9, 10 months, I spent my bed was out in the hall. I wasn't that badly hurt. The serious guys got rooms. I ended up with a bed in the hall. But Walter Reed was so overcrowded then, it was just overwhelmed. Because I was basically the only hospital that was taking care of seriously wounded Vietnam vets.
After your 10 months at Walter Reed, where did you go?
I came home, and then I went to, I was in and out patient at the VA hospital in Newington, where I had multiple surgeries, where they restructured my hand.
When were you actually discharged from the Army?
April 4th of 1969.
Where were you?
Living?
Was it when you were in one of the hospitals, or was it after you had come home to Connecticut?
Actually, I was still at Walter Reed.
Joe, did you receive any medals or citations?
Purple Heart.
I know you received others.
Well, I received all the medals that you get from going to Vietnam, you know, the service medal, the distinguished service medal, whatever it is, the combat, Vietnam combat medal, whatever.
Now I'm going to switch gears and ask you some questions about daily life. When you were over in country, how did you stay in touch with your family?
Letters, writing letters.
Were you a good letter writer?
Absolutely.
And being out in the bush so much, how was the mail service for you?
They flew it in and out in helicopters. They'd come out like maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks with a big bag, and they'd get off the plane and they'd give it to an officer, and he would start pulling it out and reading off names. And you'd run up and grab whatever they had for you. I mean, it wasn't always just letters. They would, you know, you'd get stuff. I always had my parents send me Kool-Aid, because remember I told you when I first got there, I was out in that huge perimeter for about a month. Well, the river that went by us was white, like milk, and that was our water. That was our drinking water. So you had to put iodine pills in them, fill them up, you know, 4 or 5 pills in each thing. So it's horrible. So I told my parents, send me, thank you, honey. So I told my parents, send me Kool-Aid, ketchup, mustard, you know, little packs of ketchup and mustard, so you could doctor up the food. It was basically we were eating sea rations.
That's my next question. What did you do for food?
We ate sea rations, which, you know, not very good.
What did that consist of?
Well, you get one meal was like spaghetti cans, spaghetti and meatballs. The most popular one was lima bean. Not popular, but nobody liked ham and lima beans. But I loved it, because I love lima beans and the ham. I loved it, and so I would trade everybody, or they'd give them to me because they didn't want to eat those. And well, you know, you get cans of fruit, you'd get pound cake, which you know you got a little, you know, creative. You made things like you took the pound cake and made like a little pizza. Take the sauce, the extra sauce in the spaghetti, and put a little cheese on it, and you try to make something different just to give you, and you know, whatever your parents could send you, you know, like candy bars. And plus every 3 days they would give us 5 packs of cigarettes, like 3 cans of soda, 3 cans of beer, and gum or something like that. And I used to always trade my soda for beer, though, because I wasn't much of a soda drinker. I have never been much of a soda drinker. So my thing was, and guys would jump at that because they all wanted soda, but I'd rather, because there was no place to, there was no place to get it cold, you know. It wasn't going to be cold, so you're drinking warm beer. But, you know, back then it was a treat, I thought.
So that entire time that you were in country, you were out in the bush. You never had a mess hall with hot meals?
No. I only saw maybe 4 or 5 women the whole time I was there. I think one time we went through a village and we saw a mountain yard village, what they call the mountain yards, because they were the people, Vietnamese people that lived in the mountains. And I think we saw 4 or 5 women. And that was the only time in my 61 days in Vietnam that I saw any women whatsoever.
Did you have enough supplies other than food, ammunition, clothing, materials?
Ammunition, plenty. Food, plenty. Clothing, no. I wore the same, I think I had the same pair of pants for the whole time I was there, and they were split from my crotch right to my ankles. I never got a new pair in the whole time I was there.
You wore the same exact pair of pants.
And they were
61 days.
I believe, yeah, and they were split right down. It was, yeah, we didn't get a change of clothes that I remember. I don't think not that I remember. I remember having them split pants forever.
What did you do about showers or bathing? Or you didn't?
Basically, you didn't. You went into the river. But if you did that, you had to, you know, you had to have guards everywhere. You had to set up, and you know, you maybe get 5, 10 guys. And if I took a bath, or there was no showers. If I took a bath, it was probably once or twice in the whole 2 months I was there that you would go. But you know, you go out in the monsoons. When it poured in the monsoons, you take your clothes off and you stand out there with a bar of soap and clean yourself. That's what you did. You know, there wasn't any, okay, let's get a shower or something like that. That didn't happen.
Did you feel stress? Was stress a constant on the job, or did you get used to it? Because your entire time in country was in extremely stressful situations.
Always stressed, always worried, always scared. If you weren't in that, I'll say the majority of us were in that place. There were people, like I remember one gentleman from Puerto Rico that used to walk around. We'd be out on a mission. He'd be carrying his rifle by the handle, and we used to. I remember saying to him, Hernandez, you got to be ready. You know, you got to carry it in the ready. And he just, well, he ended up getting killed. He just wasn't prepared, and but he didn't understand. He couldn't speak English. You know, it was just a difficult. It's not like it is now. You know, now you have people that can speak the languages or wherever you're there and stuff. Well, we had these guys from Puerto Rico that couldn't speak English, and you know, they basically hung with themselves. But you know, they were part of your outfit, and you know, they just didn't. I don't think they saw the seriousness of the situation. That's the way I felt. That they were just, you know, it wasn't as bad as it appears to be until you got into a firefight.
How did you cope with the constant stress?
Oh, God. I don't know. Just counting days. Couldn't wait to go home. Letters. Drink beer when I had it to calm down. If I knew, I wouldn't drink if I knew I was going out, you know, on a mission. If I was going to be on guard duty. You know, when I can say you come off of guard duty, now you know you are off of a mission. You knew you had a day or two off. You know, you were gonna let you relax, and you know, then I would drink. I'd save up maybe 7-8 beers. That was a way to calm down. So I smoked a lot of cigarettes. I was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, easy. People were giving me their Pall Malls because nobody liked Pall Mall. I took them all. I didn't care. I just, you know, just smoking was a non-stop thing.
Did you do anything special for good luck?
No, not really. I prayed a lot.
Did you have any R&R or leave?
Never got that far. I was going to, or I was either going to go to Taiwan or to Australia, and I never got that far. They usually did that about halfway through your year there, so I never got that far.
What did people do for entertainments in the downtime?
Played cards, you know, checkers, music, you know, but it had to be quiet. You know, it couldn't be where you got the whole bass rock and, you know. The African Americans have always had music going.
What did they have at that time?
Just radios.
Those little transistors?
Little transistors, yeah.
Did you see any USO shows while you were over?
Nope.
Joe, do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
While I was in Vietnam? Not really. I remember one event though. Well, actually, I don't know if this is humorous. I remember a guy getting off a helicopter, a new recruit, and he had his grenades on him, but they were hooked by the pins. And we all were standing there. You know, we're all excited. We're going to get a hot meal. Once a week, they brought you in a hot meal, steak, milk. We got to have cold milk, you know, baked potatoes and stuff. And this guy got off the helicopter and he had his grenades. And you never saw guys die faster in your life. I mean, we were all just diving into the bunkers, just screaming, "Look at this stupid bastard! Look at this stupid bastard!" Screaming at him. And he, you know, he didn't know. He should have known.
But nobody told him before?
Not before he got on the helicopter. You know, my God, and you know, here we come off the thing, and we laughed at that after because it was pretty funny. You know, this kid gets off the thing, and you know, I mean, I hadn't been there that long, but I was, you know, once you're out there 2-3 weeks a month, once you're out there and you've gone through all the missions and you get into the routine, you're hardened now. You know what's coming, and when you see guys like that, it's. I remember one time I walked out, might be funny, I walked out to go to the bathroom, and I wandered too far. And on the way back, I tripped a flare. And all I heard everybody screaming, you know, they're coming, they're there. And I hit the ground and I'm screaming, no, it's me, it's me, it's me. And they're, who is it? And I had to give them my name, rank, serial number. I had to give them everything. And, okay, stand up. And I'm standing up and I got my, you know, I'm like, okay, it's me. I guess that might have been the funniest thing I had happen over. I didn't have too many funny things. I wasn't there that long. That was the key for me. I didn't have that much of an opportunity.
Joe, what did you think of the officers?
Well, I'll tell you, when I got to Vietnam, the first officer I had was probably the best officer I had ever.
Do you remember his name?
I have no idea. But we never, for the first month I was there, we never even heard a round fired. He kept us in that perimeter. He kept us quiet. He kept us out of trouble. And then he left the field, and they brought in another guy, and right away that guy started volunteering us to go do these missions. He started, okay, yeah, we'll do it. Well, you know, my outfit will do this. And that's when we started those alert missions. That's when we got closer to Cambodia. That's when we started doing things that, you know, weren't very smart. He was gung-ho. The other guy was more, you know, maybe because, too, he was at the end of his tour. But he was fabulous. He just kept us, there was no action. You know, and it was just, you know, you'd go out in your patrols, you do your guard duty, you do that stuff, which is stressful, which is, you know, scary and everything, but we never encountered anybody until this guy got us, and then he moved us, and then things, all hell started breaking loose.
What was your highest rank?
I think I got to be a Spec 4. I believe I did. If I did, it was in Vietnam, but I'm not quite positive of that.
What did you think of your fellow soldiers?
For the majority, they were fantastic. The majority of them were dedicated, cared about them, cared about the people around them. You know, were always there to back you up. Always watched your back. It was enjoyable. I mean, they were just good guys.
Did you stay in touch with anybody?
Not one. Not one. I never had a chance to get anything because I was rushed out so fast, and I don't even know what happened to most of them. To this day, I have no idea. The only one I know of is Ronnie Stuckey, my friend who got killed.
And how did you find out about that?
Well, when I woke up, remember I woke up? I woke up that day in the hospital. Remember, I came out of the coma. Well, I knew the sergeant got killed. I knew that another sergeant had gotten killed the day I got hurt. But other than that, you know, I only basically, because I wasn't there that long, I only really made friends with the 10 guys that I was in my platoon, that we were always together. You know, we did everything together because, you know, that's the way it worked. You know, you were always with your platoon. You did all the missions together. You did that. You know, when they broke us down in those 5-man alert teams, it was 5 out of the 10. That's the way it worked. The same sergeant and everything. So, you know, I remember some of the names. I remember one guy's name from Alabama was Cecil Kite. Kite, like? K-I-T-E, yep. My friend Ronnie Stuckey. You know, I feel so bad. I don't even know the sergeant's name that got killed in the hole with me. I could find it if I got to look at the wall. I've only been to the wall once. If I got to look at the wall, I would be able to, I think I could pick his name out, but I'm not positive. I'm not positive. I was scared to get too close to anybody. You know, that's why I was kind of glad when I went by myself and Paul and Dave stayed. I was kind of happy with that because I didn't have to worry about them. You know, I had to go and take care of me and let them take care of themselves, and everything would have been fine. I would have hated to be in the same platoon or something with them, and one of them, something happened to one of them, and me be right there, so.
After you were discharged and you were home in Connecticut, what did you do immediately after?
Basically, I didn't do a heck of a lot. I started hanging out in the bar. I'd go down to the bars, basically Benny Nero's. I'd go down there because I knew most of the people. A lot of my friends from that I hung out with before I went, stuff, that's where they would be. And I go, I remember going up to the Berkshire Pharmacy because that's where we used to hang out in high school. I'd go up there, I'd go up to Gilbert to watch him play ball, just because I was comfortable there, and I felt like, okay, this is where I want to be. But then I kind of started drifting off into, I got involved with drugs, alcohol,
What was your homecoming to your hometown like for you?
For the majority, it was good. There were some difficult times. There were some people that gave me a hard time. Baby killers. You guys over there, you don't know what you're doing. You're killing civilians and doing that. And you tell them no, you weren't. No, you try to explain a situation where you could never gather. They always told you don't gather more than 2 people, because they were literally, what the Viet Cong used to do was give a little kid a grenade, have him hold it, and say, okay, you walk up there and drop this right in that crowd, and we'll give you a candy bar. Oh, let me go. And he'd go up there and drop it. Of course, he'd kill himself. He killed 5, 6 guys standing around. And that's how, we're called baby killers because of that. Incidents with the My Lai thing, with that guy, but you walk through a village, put in a situation, you don't know anybody. They're all dressed the same. They all look the same. You don't know who you're dealing with. If somebody comes walking out of a hooch, he's got a rifle, you got to shoot him. It's either, what they always said, you're either going to be the quick or you're going to be the dead. That's what they used to tell us. You're the quick or you're the dead. One of the two. So if somebody comes out with a weapon, you got to let them have it. You can't just say, oh, geez, what are you doing with that? That's the way it was.
Did you go back to school at all on the GI Bill?
Yes, I did.
And what did you study?
Accounting.
Did you go on to become an accountant?
No, never finished. Never finished. Like I said, I got involved with drugs and the alcohol, and and then it just kind of pulled me away from everything. I put myself in a shell, and then I was, like in and out of the VA hospitals all the time, always getting something done for 2 or 3 years. It just seemed like I was, one time I went in for 3 months when they attached my hand to my stomach for 3 months. When they gave me the new thumb, they redid that, and they did a bunch of stuff, and I just never got settled back into that,
Did you go back to work anywhere?
Not right away. For about the first 5, 6 years, I just kind of would travel. I'd take off for a month or 2, then come back, stay here, get my finances together again, get some money put away, take off again, come back. I did that because I knew once I met somebody and settled down that I wasn't going anywhere. And I wanted to see the country. I wanted to go places. So I traveled. I did a lot of traveling, all over the country. The band, the Burgundy Sunset, which I grew up with, all those guys, they were in California at the time, so I spent a lot of time out there with them.
I know that later you did go on to work for the post office. Did you make that your career?
Yes.
How many years did you work at the post office?
31.
And you recently retired?
3.5 years ago.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
DAV. I joined the VFW down in Winston, but I let my membership run out. I didn't become a life member like a dummy. but I will get back into that. I just never made time. You know, it's like, it's kind of like, you know, you just doesn't seem like, you know, when I first got married, the first time I had the 2 boys and I was always coaching, or I was doing something to, you know, to do something with them. I was always occupied. I just, you know, even now, Paul and Dave could come on down. They go down there every other week and sit and have beers, and they're always inviting me, and I just don't seem to find the time. Even though now it's getting a lot better. Chrissy's wonderful at, you know, that, I mean, she does her little things with her friends and stuff, and I have my little thing where I, you know, I go like on my golf trip, or I go visit friends and stuff like that. So.
Did you join any other veterans organizations?
No.
Are you active in the DAV?
I'm not active, no. I do little things. I go down when the thing comes into Torrington, I'll go down there, and, you know, I'll hang out, talk to people and stuff, and not often, no. I do that, usually when I do that is because I have an issue where I want to talk to them, and then I'll hang around and talk to guys and stuff that come in and have questions.
Joe, did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Yeah, absolutely.
How?
Well, I'm extremely proud of the guys and the women that are part of the military. No matter how simple their job, everybody that's in the military is a hero to me. They deserve every accolade they get, whatever kind of, you know, whatever they can get, they deserve it. It's a difficult life. It's a difficult thing. And war is the worst thing you can experience. Second worst thing. The worst thing is to lose a child, which I have experienced too. But war is just, no human being should have to, you know, especially these guys now. When I was there, it was only, you go for a year, you're done. These guys are doing 3, 4, 5 tours. It's, God bless them, and their families. You know, I have so much respect for the military now. It's,
how did your military service affect your life?
Physically, it totally affected my life. It changed everything. I had to learn to do everything. I was always right-handed. Now I'm left-handed. I had to do everything differently. You know, it took away. Well, it didn't. I can't say that, because I did get. I play golf now all the time. I played basketball, softball forever. You know, not as well as I could have, but I still played. I had still competed. I still play golf, and I'm a pretty damn good golfer. But physically, it affected me, you know, a lot. Mentally, I've never had a problem with it. Once I got over the hump that this is me, and there ain't nothing going to change it. I'm never going to get my hand back. I'm never going to get that time back. You know, deal with it. And that's what I did. Like I said, that guy in Walter Reed, lifesaver. I've never had a problem mentally with it. You know, it's never affected me. I never had nightmares. I've never had any of those problems like everybody has. So.
Joe, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or something we haven't covered, or any other stories that you can recall?
Not that I can think of.
You will when we shut the camera.
Probably.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your service, and I'd like to thank you for your interview.
You're quite welcome.